Thuringian State Parliament. The seat of the Parliament and its 91 MPs, as well as the workplace of more than 160 staff members who organise running Parliament. The ensemble of buildings in the south of Erfurt consists of 3 building sections. The oldest section is the area on the Arnstädter Straße, built in 1939. Today, members of Parliament and their staff have their offices here, but the building also has a dark history. What many citizens don't know is that the Gestapo was also housed here, and the deportation of Thuringian Jews was planned from here. Visible from afar is the high-rise, built in the 1950s, which today houses parts of the parliamentary administration. The Erfurt district administration worked in the building before reunification. In the meantime, it belongs to the Urban Heritage Conservation. After the foundation of the Free State of Thuringia, the first democratically elected parliament started to work in the inner courtyard. It was all head-on, the tables like this, the government sat here, the parliament here, one behind the other at the tables. Well, then there was a time when the windows were so drafty in winter that we sat in coats in the plenary hall. It soon became clear that this could only be a temporary solution. In 2 construction phases, first the high-rise was renovated, and in 2002 a modern functional building was erected. After this, work began on the new plenary hall. We're going to have a discussion round. The plenary hall, inaugurated at the end of 2003, is today the heart of the Thuringian Parliament. It embodies central characteristics of democracy in the Free State. The fact that the seats form a circle, where the government is also part of the circle, is an essential external representation of what parliamentarism is about. Once on Arnstädter Straße, this building symbolises what once was as the Gestapo headquarters for Thuringia. The high-rise symbolises the second dictatorship. And this, transparent, open glass round, represents modern democracy. Every 5 years, all citizens who are 18 years and up, are German citizens and live in Thuringia, are called upon to elect a new state parliament. The elected members of parliament are the representatives of all Thuringians in the legislative period following the election. Generally, the Thuringian parliament consists of 88 MPs. In Thuringia, we have what is called personalised proportional representation, the same as the federal level. This means that half of the MPs, namely 44, are sent to Parliament with the first vote on the constituencies. The other 44 MPs are selected via the national lists of the parties with the second vote. However, if a party receives less than 5% of the votes cast, they are not included in the allocation of seats, i.e., this party is then not represented in Parliament. The fact that the Thuringian Parliament currently has 91 members is due to what is called overhang mandates. A party receives one if it has been able to win more constituencies than it would actually be entitled to under proportional representation. Each of the 91 MPs thus accounts for almost 24,000 Thuringians. According to the Constitution, power comes from the people. The elected MPs represent them. Their tasks: electing the Premier, controlling the government, but above all, legislation. The central consideration of the separation of powers is that no state authority acquires too much power and abuses it, as was the case during the National Socialist era. Parliament controls the government. Parliament elects the Premier and is responsible for ensuring that the government is supported by the majority and criticised and controlled by the minority. How does it work in practice? If you want to become the Premier, you need an absolute majority of the votes in Parliament. Generally, the number of votes from his or her own party is not enough for him or her. Rather, he or she has to win other partners as well. A coalition is formed for this purpose. The current Premier, Bodo Ramelow, leads a coalition between the SPD, the Green Party, and his party, the Left. The other parties, currently the CDU and the AfD, form the opposition. The work of the government is an ongoing topic in Parliament. There is, of course, the right of oral questions and small questions, but there is also the advantage that certain subjects of large questions can also be discussed in plenary. And there are also special control bodies, such as the Parliamentary Control Commission, which also deal with questions of the secret services, etc. Most initiatives for new laws come from the government. But also fractions, or at least 10 MPs, can bring a law on the way. This then leads to readings in the plenary and the responsible committees. No law leaves the Parliament as it came in, but that depends entirely on the extent of the laws. If it is article laws that contribute to transferring EU law, then the modification is rather small. But if it is something like school law or like the budget law, then of course there are still many modifications. The committees discuss the content. MPs consult experts when necessary. For example, when it comes to the question of nursing keys in individual areas such as hospitals or nursing facilities, it is always very important that we listen to those affected so that we can conclude what the local practitioners are saying. A law only comes into force when the majority of the MPs have approved it, and the President of the Parliament has signed it. The law leaves the Parliament upon being published in the Law Gazette. It comes into force. Processes and procedures are organised by the Parliamentary Advisory Committee. The Elders Committee is, of course, not the committee of the senior officials or the oldest member of Parliament, but the Elders Committee is a board that supports the President of the State Parliament in the performance of his duties within the balance of power of the State Parliament. Its members are the Vice Presidents, the Parliamentary Group Leaders and the Parliamentary Directors. The Elders Committee always meets before the plenary meetings. In addition, the MPs are assisted by the Parliament administration staff. They ensure that MPs receive the support they need to make their decisions. The Thuringian Members of Parliament. Who doesn't first think of parliamentary debates and speeches during plenary sittings? But the activities of the elected representatives of the people involve much more than that. Let us accompany 5 members of Parliament in their daily work. Usually I arrive here at Parliament around 9 to 9:30 a.m. First, I take a look at how the current news situation has developed, whether there is anything particularly urgent to address. You see that you've been correctly reproduced when you conveyed a message, how the position of my parliamentary group as a whole has been integrated in the media, how it has been reproduced, and you check that with press work. Of course, you also look at what's new, what you have to respond to, and I think that's also the focus of press work. I travel a lot in my constituency, talk to a lot of people, and that gives them a feeling for the work that a member does, and I think that is very important, because in times of disenchantment with politics, there are already some prejudices against politicians. The request to all political representatives to continue to support all the interests of the future community of Thuringian is still valid. I always say work for the head in Erfurt. This means reading into draft laws, thinking in committees, asking questions. But on the other hand, it is very important for me to be with the people in this constituency. That is our purpose as members of parliament, that people come to us, describe problems to us, but also give us suggestions and hints, which can then be incorporated into the legislation work in Erfurt. Every Wednesday, we meet as a group to discuss current political issues, to prepare the plenary, and simply to manage everyday parliamentary life together. Of course, if there are current hot topics and different opinions on them in the group, things can get a little heated at times, but always objectively. And we ensure discussions are forward-thinking and solution-oriented, so that we can figure out an approach and tackle the issues together. There is, of course, a great need for coordination between the three coalition parties, and that is why we sometimes have to get more into detail than we would like at a meeting. Because, of course, we also want to be outside in order to talk to the public, to address problems. This is not always easy, because sessions sometimes come up in between. That is what moves us as MPs, as part of our work, namely to go where there are young people. For me, as a youth politician, there are also young people who are in youth associations. That is why we are here today in the garden of the Nature Friends Youth in Erfurt. I believe the hope is that we will take the wishes they have, that I will also take them with me to Parliament, into the work I do there. Because at some point we simply do not see this as being very close to the working reality that we otherwise have as parliamentarians. We are very strongly influenced by a daily meeting routine, very formal processes, but this is not always the way young people want to participate in political processes. So this is where politics becomes practical, it should be said. Everything that we demand at a state level, everything that we try to implement in our work in Parliament, you can see at least part of it here. This is what we achieve with the support of youth associations, for example, and what this means in concrete terms and in practice. I always like that, because it is much more concrete than the debates that are often held in the plenary and committee. Today we have an evening event on the subject of the European Union's funding policy. We are always glad when 30 or 40 people attend, and of course they are people who are green-leaning and interested in green politics. But there are also, as we have seen today, people who represent very specific institutions. The Farmers' Union, for example, was here today. There were people from the Paritätische Welfare Service, i.e. people who are also affected by the issue come to such things, discuss with us, and of course also give us good input. You don't need a full hall to shape your own politics. I don't think that's the aspiration, but you need people who are interested and have the desire to help shape politics from their civil society point of view. So the number is not so important. It's like this. My constituency is 130 kilometers away, and that's why we have the option of staying overnight in hotels here in Erfurt. And it makes sense to prepare for the day in the evening so that when it comes, you are ready. Somehow it feels the same every time. No matter what the final result is, politics don't seem to change that much. It's decided from above somewhere, but I don't really think anyone is interested in what happens at the base. I seldom see the really pressing questions being asked. So it's not enough to just vote, but it's important to vote. In addition to the election, there are a number of other opportunities for citizens to get involved during the legislative period.
Neben der repräsentativen Demokratie, die wir in unserer Verfassung haben, ist es eine ergänzende Maße, ein ergänzendes Instrument, das geschaffen wurde, damit im Bürger, wenn es um Gesetze geht, wenn es um Veränderungen im Land geht, mit Unterschriftensammlung, amtlichen Unterschriftensammlung sagen, das Parlament muss sich damit beschäftigen, mit unserem Anliegen beschäftigen. Ich denke nur an die Gemeindegebietsreform, wo es da Initiativen gab, auch schon in der vorhergehenden Wahlperiode. Das ist also ein ergänzendes Instrument der repräsentativen Demokratie.
A further possibility on influencing is submitting a petition. According to the Constitution, every citizen has the right to turn to Parliament. The Committee on Petitions takes up these concerns and examines them. There are very different concerns. These can be neighbourhood disputes, i.e. civil matters, but of course they can also be complaints about decisions by authorities in this country. Then the ministries are asked to present the facts to the authorities. Now the Committee on Petitions can either act as a mediator, can remedy the situation, but must also sometimes say that the decision has been taken correctly. In the online discussion forum on the Thuringian Parliament internet site, citizens can actively participate in the debate on draft laws. They can both inform themselves about draft laws and express their opinions, and are thus involved in the political discussion processes. There is also an ombudsman to whom Thuringians can turn with their concerns. And I certainly can't stand up and say, "Oh, they're doing everything wrong," while keeping quiet myself. Otherwise, you don't change anything. So just complaining and not doing anything, I don't think that works. If you would like to experience the Thuringian Parliament live, you can do so during the plenary sessions on the Visitors Gallery. The plenary usually meets 3 days a month. But there are also many other ways of getting into contact with members of Parliament. In the Parliament, exhibitions, parliamentary evenings, and commemorative and festive events offer the opportunity for exchange between parliamentarians, citizens, and interest groups. With the slogan "Parliament in Dialogue," there are also events by the Thuringian Parliament away from the state capital of Erfurt. It is a moderated dialogue at local level, where MPs go and talk to the citizens on very specific issues: internal security, wind turbines, care, all that is currently on the political agenda in the country. Honoured citizens and volunteers can look forward to a special thank you in the form of a personal invitation from the President of the Parliament for the citizens' reception. The traditional highlight of the Parliament year is the annual Open Day in summer. Once a year, the Parliament opens its doors for all the people of the country or guests of this House for contact with MPs. The political groups, the organisations of the country, the authorities, the ministries introduce themselves. You can visit the plenary hall. There are, for example, forums with the parliamentary group leaders. And I warmly invite everyone to the next Open Day here in the Thuringian Parliament. Be our guests, experience politics up close and politicians up close.